Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today we have an eye-opening topic to discuss what may challenge your perception of a Great Barrier Reef pontoon adventure. In this video, I'm going to delve into the hidden truths and expose the downsides of embarking on such an expedition. Hey there, my name is Chris and I've just spent some time in Airlie Beach looking at all the things to see and do. Today's outer Great Barrier Reef pontoon adventure was not the absolute best experience for us, so I wanted to explain the downsides and in turn you can decide if the trip is worth it for you. Now, don't get me wrong, the Great Barrier Reef is undoubtedly the most breathtaking natural wonder on Earth, but like any adventure, there are some aspects that remain concealed from its glossy brochures and Instagram posts, and I hope to cover some of these for you today. First things first though, let's talk about the parking. As with any popular tourist destination, finding a spot can be sometimes a challenge, especially during peak seasons. It's always a good idea to arrive early and secure a parking spot close to the departure point. Trust me, you don't want to be rushing and stressing about finding a place for your vehicle. This is paid parking too, so you need to purchase a paper ticket or use a phone app to secure it online. Once you've found your parking, it's time to check in, and the check-in process for the tours is typically smooth and hassle-free. You'll need to arrive at the designated check-in location about 30 minutes prior, which could be at the Port of Airlie or another specified departure point depending on the tour company. While you wait for your departure, there is a cafe for light meals with coffee, drinks and grabbing some breakfast maybe. After a while, it's boarding time and you'll make your way through to the ticket checking and onto the boat. At this point, this is where the excitement begins and looking forward to an experience of a lifetime. But it does bring me to our first downside, seasickness. Now, seasickness shouldn't be dismissed. Even if you have never had it or don't think you'll ever get it, prevention is always better than a cure. And you should always take some travel calm. I've taken Quells or other seasickness tablets before the boat leaves. Ginger is also known to help, and I might have a ginger beer drink as the boat leaves. Know that once you get sick, it is too late and a preventative will not help. So you'll have to put up with feeling horrible the whole way there. So another point, take seasickness tablets even if you're not sure. I didn't sit here videoing people at this stage, but with the rough seas and a long journey, there were at least 100 people, including kids, that were throwing up, and this is not a nice environment to be around. I tried to escape by going outside and watching the horizon, but told by staff that it was too dangerous on the day that we went to be outside, so in turn I was forced to sit inside and watch other people get sick. This is not going to happen to everyone, especially if you're used to riding on boats, but many tourists are not used to these conditions and generally feeling these effects for the first time. Now let's talk about the crowds. I think we were pretty lucky on this tour and the boat was not too overcrowded, but this was coming into winter, during the week and not on school holidays, so you're not going to see some higher numbers around this time, but they can get pretty full. At peak seasons, you can see the boats packed up to the brim with 300 odd people, and I've experienced this both off Cairns and Airlie Beach. I think the crowds diminish some enjoyment, but as the tour companies will load up as many people as they are allowed, you need to decide whether it's something that you're keen on. Otherwise, you can always choose to visit in a low season like me. After the long journey, you arrive to the pontoon. While it's easy to find your way around, it's handy to have a plan and know the things you can do beforehand. Most people will go for the snorkeling, but there are other activities to check out. First, you can sign up for the diving, which is obviously an extra cost and nice for a first-timer. But with the extra crowds on these boats and restrictions in dive levels, this is not something I would ever do again as a qualified diver. For me, booking a specified dive tour is better in these areas. You also have a Sebi submarine that will take you for a short drive around the reef. It's a great option for those that don't want to get into the water, but I find it rather lacking in excitement compared to snorkeling or diving. Not only that, but with the high winds on the day that we went out, the semi-sub wasn't running, and I didn't get the chance to see if this one was good or not. There was also an underwater viewing chamber that you can wander in and out of anytime. This is also cool for those that don't want to get in the water, but unless you're there at the right time, you're not going to see much. I watched a couple of divers swim out and saw this cool swarm of fish going by, but that's about it. Apart from that, you can wander the platform as you see fit. Sit down at the tables or laze around on the chairs. Since you're served lunch on the tour, you can choose to eat this on the boat or walk it over to the pontoon. There is also another area sectioned off for the Reef Sleep patrons. Obviously, this is an extra charge, but you do get to stay on the pontoon overnight after all the day trippers go home. I tried to do this a few years ago, but once again, due to bad weather, it was cancelled and I had to go home with the rest of the people. Next, we get to the snorkeling, and which most people will be booking the trip for. After all, seeing the Great Barrier Reef is a bucket list item in Australia. But after living in Queensland most of my life and diving or snorkeling the reef over 100 times, I would have to say this wasn't the best day to see the reef. While the weather may look sunny and there is a nice water colour, the winds were extremely high and made the snorkeling conditions atrocious and very limiting. But let me explain this further. Firstly, no, both Matt and I are experienced swimmers. But the winds caused extra waves, and when you're floating on top of the surface, it's hard to catch your breath when you're getting smashed in the face with a wave. With the extra bad conditions, the staff had to take extra control of visitors, and they did this by reducing the snorkeling field, which means we couldn't cover any extra ground and we were constantly knocking into other swimmers. Not only that, novice snorkelers were encouraged to wear life jackets. I guess for safety, this is understandable. But with it being their first time, the wind conditions meant that they weren't in the water for very long. I even saw young children only lasting about a minute or two. I guess it can be pretty intimidating for first-timers to swim out of the platform into the deep waters. You better believe the bad conditions can make this even worse. So if you are a first timer, it's handy to find out the weather before booking this tour. There can be some upsides though, and seeing cool creatures like this turtle was pretty good. But I now have to ask, do you think it makes this trip worth it? Well, how about I discuss the time and the cost involved for this trip? The initial tour cost close to $300 Australian per person. But this is not uncommon for a Great Barrier Reef tour from Cairns, Port Douglas or Airlie Beach. That being it's a long journey to the outer reef, you can understand why it's a higher cost. However, this tour runs on an estimated 10 hours in total. This is from 8 AM to 6 PM and you have to check in 30 minutes before. Unfortunately, it's around 3 hours each way from Port of Airlie to Reef Pontoon. And that includes a stopover to pick up passengers from Hamilton Island. Ultimately, this is 6 hours of your day just sitting on the boat. Now, the other 4 hours on the actual pontoon does sound like a lot of time. But when you take away the time for lunch, wandering around to see the other facilities, changing in and out of your swimming stuff, and snorkeling, this does get reduced. Take away more time if you pay extra for the diving or even going on the helicopter tour. Now, what if you take into account of the bad weather conditions and you only spend 10 minutes in the water? Do you think that that makes the trip worth it? Even for us as confident swimmers, I think we only lasted about 30 or 40 minutes snorkeling in the water on this day. Despite the somewhat negative experience I had on this Great Barrier Reef tour from Airlie Beach, it wouldn't stop me from trying again in the future. Good weather can change the environment drastically, and there are many people out there that would have nothing but good things to say about this tour. With that said, I personally think that with the weather conditions predicted for my tour day, it should have been cancelled altogether and allowed me the opportunity to book it another time. So before you decide whether a pontoon adventure is right for you, it's crucial to weigh up the positives against these downsides I've unveiled today. If you want to check out everything else you can do from Airlie Beach, please click here for my roundup video on it. Otherwise, thanks for watching today's edition, and I will see you for the next one.